Imagine a franchise that once defined survival horror at its peak, where every bullet mattered, every hallway felt like a trap, and every door creaked like it was warning you to turn back. A series that built its identity on tension, limited resources, and the feeling that you were never truly safe. Now imagine that same franchise slowly drifting away from that identity. The early days were all about fear of the unknown, fixed camera angles that made you question what was just out of sight, inventory management that forced hard decisions, enemies that weren't just obstacles but problems you had to survive, not solve with brute force. But over time, that identity began to shift. The tension faded, the fear was replaced with action. Bigger weapons, faster movement, more enemies, more explosions. The focus changed from survival to domination. What once made the series special started to disappear under layers of spectacle. By the time the later entries arrived, the conversation around the franchise had changed completely. People weren't asking how scary it was anymore. They were asking where the horror went. Longtime fans felt disconnected. New players didn't understand what the original hype was about. The balance was gone. And when a franchise loses its identity, it reaches a dangerous point where even success doesn't feel like success anymore. The name still carried weight, but the feeling attached to it was fading. Inside the company, there was a growing awareness that something needed to change. Not a small adjustment. Not another attempt to modernize combat or expand the story in a bigger direction. Something deeper, a return to purpose, a return to the core feeling that defined everything in the beginning. Fear, not action, not power, fear. The idea that you are vulnerable, that the environment itself is hostile, that you are not in control. But changing direction like that comes with risk. Because once a series becomes known for one thing, shifting it too dramatically can alienate the remaining audience. It can fail entirely. It can end a legacy instead of saving it. Still, doing nothing was worse, so the decision was made to rebuild the experience from the ground up. A new perspective was chosen, one that would bring players closer to the world than ever before. Instead of watching from a distance, you would exist inside it. Every sound would feel immediate, every corner would feel personal, every moment of silence would feel heavier. The story would no longer center around global threats or large-scale outbreaks. It would shrink down to something intimate, something isolated, something suffocating. A single person, a single location, a single nightmare. You arrive at a decaying plantation house in rural Louisiana. The air is thick. The silence is unnatural. The structure itself feels abandoned by time, yet not entirely empty. There is a sense that something has been living here, waiting, watching. The main character is not a trained soldier or a government agent. He is ordinary. That is important, because fear works best when the person experiencing it is not equipped to handle it. Inside the house, everything feels wrong. The walls feel too tight. The corridors feel too long. The sounds of movement travel in ways they shouldn't. Every door you open feels like a mistake you can't undo. At first there is confusion, then curiosity, then the realization that leaving might not be as simple as arriving. And then you meet the family. Not in the way you would expect, not as monsters in the traditional sense, but as something far more unsettling. People who act like they belong to this place so completely that their behavior feels like part of the house itself. There is a presence in their movements, a confidence that comes from knowing the environment better than you ever will. They don't chase you like enemies. They hunt you like you are an intruder in something sacred. The house becomes a maze of survival. Every room holds uncertainty. Every sound behind you becomes a question you don't want answered. The fear here is not just what you see. It is what you imagine is waiting just outside your vision. It is the feeling that you are never alone, even when nothing is visible. You learn quickly that resources are scarce. Ammunition is limited. Healing is not guaranteed. Every encounter has weight because mistakes are costly. Running is sometimes better than fighting. Hiding becomes a strategy, not a weakness. This is a different kind of experience from what came before. It slows you down, forces you to listen, forces you to hesitate. And in that hesitation, fear grows. The sound design becomes one of the most important elements. A floorboard creaking in another room becomes more threatening than any enemy on screen. A distant door opening becomes a signal that something has changed. Silence becomes its own kind of danger because silence means anticipation. As you move deeper into the house, the structure itself begins to feel alive. Not literally, but psychologically. The layout becomes familiar, then unfamiliar again. Paths loop in ways that feel wrong. Safety feels temporary at best. And then there are the moments where the family is present. Their presence changes everything. The rules no longer feel stable. Encounters become unpredictable. They don't behave like standard enemies. They speak, they react, they remember. There is a sense that you are not the first person to end up here, and that thought alone makes everything more disturbing. As the experience continues, the story begins to expand beyond the house. Small details hint that this place is not as isolated as it seems. There are deeper layers, experiments, contamination, something that spreads beneath the surface of what is visible. The horror begins to shift again, not away from the intimate fear, but deeper into it. The idea that what is happening here is part of something larger, yet still trapped in this location. The world outside does not feel like a rescue. It feels like a delay. Even when new information is revealed, the core feeling never changes. Vulnerability remains constant. You are still limited, still uncertain, still trapped in an environment that refuses to let you feel safe for too long. And then something familiar appears. A presence tied to the larger history of the series. A reminder that even though the tone has changed, the world still carries its past forward. Figures from earlier stories return, not as heroes in the traditional sense, but as part of a larger web that connects everything together. One of those figures is Chris Redfield, whose appearance signals that the story is not as contained as it first seemed. The broader conflict still exists. The world is still unstable, and the events inside the house are only one piece of a much larger puzzle. But even with these connections, the experience never loses its focus. It remains grounded in survival. Every step forward feels earned. Every discovery comes with risk. Every victory feels temporary. What makes this shift so effective is not just the change in perspective, but the return to restraint. The experience understands that fear does not come from scale. It comes from limitation. It comes from pressure. It comes from uncertainty. When players are given too much power, fear disappears. When players are given too much information, tension fades. When players are allowed to dominate every encounter, survival becomes routine. Here, routine does not exist. Even progression feels dangerous. New areas are not rewards. They are unknowns. The further you go, the less stable everything becomes. Not because the game becomes harder in a traditional sense, but because your understanding of safety constantly erodes. The design forces adaptation. It forces attention. It forces patience. And through that process, something important happens. The experience begins to feel personal, not because of story alone, but because of the constant state of vulnerability. Every player develops their own sense of fear, shaped by their own reactions, their own mistakes, their own moments of panic. That individuality is what makes the experience resonate so strongly. It is not just a horror game, it is a return to a philosophy, a belief that fear should be slow, that tension should build, that survival should matter. As the story reaches its later stages, the scale expands slightly, but the core never changes. Even when new environments are introduced, the same rules apply. Observation, resource management, awareness, caution. The feeling of being hunted never fully disappears, and when answers finally begin to surface, they do not erase the fear. They explain it, they give context to it. They show that the nightmare is not random, but constructed, intentional, engineered. That realization adds a new layer of discomfort, because understanding something does not always make it less frightening. Sometimes it makes it worse. Knowing the origin of the horror does not remove it. It deepens it. By the time the experience begins to close, the transformation is complete. What started as a risky reinvention has become a clear statement. The franchise did not need to become bigger. It needed to become focused again. It needed to remember what made it effective in the first place. Not power, not spectacle, but survival under pressure. And when everything is stripped away, what remains is clarity. A single person, a hostile environment, limited resources, and the constant feeling that safety is always temporary, that return to form is what reshapes everything that comes after. It influences future design. It shifts expectations. It restores trust in what the series can be when it stops trying to outscale itself and instead leans into what it always did best. Fear that feels real because it is close. Fear that works because it is controlled. Fear that matters because survival is never guaranteed. In the end, the experience stands as a turning point. Not just for the franchise, but for how modern horror can be approached when stripped down to its core ideas. And long after the final moments fade, what stays behind is not just the memory of what happened in that house, but the feeling of being inside it, watching, listening, waiting, never fully safe.